How to light for different times of the day. Hello everybody, my name is Mark Bagnoli, I'm a cinematographer, and today we're looking at a fitness commercial for an AG1. It's a nutrition product, and throughout the whole commercial we have different lighting settings: daylight, moonlight, sunrise. And in this video I'm going to explain you every single lighting setup and how you can use them for your own project. This is the first shot we're looking at, and this is the daylight theme scene, and we have this typical spot looks. Most of the time this is what you got in a spot commercial. You have a person, very orange saturated skin, and everything else pretty blue. This typical complementary color look, orange teal, and it just looks healthy. We want people to look healthy. It's about health, so we want a strong saturated feeling on the person. And how do we create a shot like this? First of all, when you're shooting a fitness commercial, you often see this type of location. It's never a normal fitness studio where everyone is normally working out. The reason for it is space, lights, and atmosphere. A normal fitness studio most of the time has a very narrow ceiling and a lot of spotlights hanging around, and the whole light just feels everywhere and doesn't look aesthetic, doesn't look clean. We want to make us feel more important, more lifestyle, more unnormal, I would say. The beauty of cinematography is picking a topic and recreating it in a way that it feels very close to the audience, at the same time makes someone feel unique. And this is a location like this. Also, the biggest plus is this huge windows and light possibilities here. So after we set up our camera, this is the angle we want to work on. We set the light direction pretty fast, because what I told you often before is your key light should always come from your light sources in the image. So when we have window here, it's pretty normal that the key light should also come from this side, because that's light direction. For sure, there could be a window also here or here. But when you often have the problem that your footage looks too lit, that's probably the reason, because you have to work with the light logic that you already set up. Also, the next thing people often forget is to light your environment. You can see this nice light texture on the back of the wall, and there's several ways to do this. One thing is they just shot at the right time, the sun is here, the light is facing this direction. So why is it important? First, it creates textures. Cameras love light, textures, something interesting to look at than just boring plain wall. The next thing, which is more important, is, I told you before, sometimes something looks lit and we don't want something to look lit. We want to light it cool, but then you shouldn't feel it. And this is the key how you can avoid this feeling, because we see a lot of people only light here, big light dome on someone, bam, exposure, perfect, everything cool. But when you add a light in the background and also sometimes a light on the foreground, you create more layers. So your lighting becomes more realistic, because why should only she be affected by the light? So this is a huge window, here is a huge window, so the light should be everywhere else, also in the background. And that's what they've done here. When you don't have the luck of the sun being at the right location, just throw in your biggest light, strongest light that you have. In a location like this, you need big guns, M90 or bigger. With on daylight, you have to overpower the sun. So just imagine this more maybe for a nighttime situation or late at the day, overcast. Then you probably are fine with a 1200 or maybe XT26 from Aperture or something like this with a Fresnel. And then you can blast the light inside from the outside of an angle. And here you can actually see we have a very hard source. It's not that soft. So I think something like a 150 light dome is totally fine, because in a sport commercial you don't want to work too soft, because you lose the definition of the muscles and also the power and energy. This is something that has to be a little bit more contrasty. When you are unlucky and right here is a white wall, the light from here will bounce back and we lose all our contrast. So to control the light a little bit more, you can black out with negative fill the whole other side of the room, so you get this nice contrast. Then to color grade something like this, also pretty easy. You just isolate the skin in DaVinci Resolve, make an outside mask and put blue, a little cooler tone, into the background, and it's done. Sure, you can add a little bit of desaturation of the shadows, so that's just not plain blue. And there are also many LUTs that basically do the same. You can do this in hue and saturation and blah blah blah. Orange hue, like I said, Google it, type into YouTube the most common look to color grade. A lot of people will tell you and show you a simple way to do it. When we go in for the close-up, we still have the same lighting language. We didn't change a thing. They still have this very hard light coming from the side. Normally, what you could do is, in a close-up, you normally go a little bit softer, because in a wide shot, it's more difficult to create contrast, so you're hitting the people more with hard light. But here, in a close-up, you can put diffusion in between your light, or add a fill light to get a little more wrap around the face, and then you're done. But I don't think that they done this. I still think it's just a huge light dome that they used here, and that's it. The other thing, like I said, what you can do is a big light mat just above the camera on 3, 4, 5%, also very at the low end. It depends on the ambience of the room, to fill in the shadows a little bit more, to extend the wrap of the light. But like I said before, they didn't done this in this shot, and I think it looks pretty cool because also of the movement and overall dynamic of the scene. Here we also have a very nice angle. But cinematography are one of the most probably shot things in the world, because it's very accessible. Everyone knows a fitness studio, everyone knows someone good looking with muscles, so you tend to do for cinematography training a lot of these sports commercials. But now you have to think about, okay, how can I make it more special? And a lot of people have the problem how they place their camera. They are most of the time eye level or hip level. You don't go too often very low or very high, and that's what they've done here. This really cool low angle where she comes out of the frame into the frame, and we have these nice leading lines in the background. You have to be more aware of your surroundings. Also go very far away sometimes and go for a super wide shot or very telephoto shot of a wide scene. Or like here, put the camera on the ground, tilt up, try a top shot. Sports very lack these kinds of angles, and that's how you can make your shots a little more special than the rest of the people doing videos like this. So this is the next scene. This is more of a sunrise scene, so the colors are overall a little bit warmer. First things first, nice camera angle. Also, the aspect ratio is pretty interesting. We are in this typical 3:2 aspect ratio, which is basically an Alexa and open gate modus. What is open gate? Most of your cameras have a 60:9 readout. So you have your photography sensor, and you only use a small part of the sensor for your video. And this aspect ratio is practically the full sensor of the Alexa, which is not 16:9. It's a little bit bigger in the vertical area. And there are a few cameras that can also do it, like a lot of Panasonic consumer cameras have open gate modus, and it's also better for anamorphic shooting because you have more space and more image to convert. And overall, it's a nice in between from 9 to 16 and 60:9, so it works better on both platforms. So when you want to get this nice sunrise sunset look, you also need strong shadows. Morning light is pretty hard. As you can see, he's almost clipping here, or maybe he is clipping. So the contrast levels are very, very high. And we set up the camera like this because, like in the shot before, we set where the key light is coming from. And also always put curtains, please. Curtains are your best friend in front of windows. It will look 10,000 times more better because you're not distracted by everything that's happening out there. Also diffuses the light and gives the image a bit of textures. What we learned 10 minutes ago, textures are our best friend. So, and we now look at him, he actually has a nice wrap around him. So the light is hard, but not that hard. That means when you have the space and the power, sometimes it's better to just light from the outside, shoot directly at in, and put a small diffusion in the room in between the light and the actor to diffuse the light a little bit. Otherwise, on a set like this, where you have a huge kitchen, there always is also a funny thing when you look at commercials. Somehow everyone is a millionaire. Every normal family has this 300-foot wide kitchen and living room and everything. But it's just because you can fit a bigger butterflies in there. And that's what they maybe done here. Just put a 6x6 diffusion, maybe on a quarter, really small diffusion, like I said before, and then from outside shot the light directly at him. Also, because we have this hard contrast, as you can see, and this side of him is clipping, normally you would need a backlight to get a little bit of separation, but I thought of it, and like in the same shot before, now we have another light that's just hitting the wall at an angle, creating texture and an exposure difference. And now the back of him becomes really bright, and because of this brightness behind him, we get separation without using an edge light. Because in a situation like this, where should the edge light coming from? Every edge light would probably feel very unnatural, and in a commercial where it's about health, living, and everything that you should do, or we should do, but wouldn't fit in. So I think the look they've done here is pretty cool. Also, just a tech difference in white balance. When you're at 5.5 and your skin and everything's normal, and you just put the background, this warmer light, so that you be color light and push it more to the warm area, you get this feeling of a sunset, sunrise. You don't always have to go full look that everything now is warm. It just helps when the first scene before is pretty cool and this one is just a bit warmer than normal. The effect is totally sold. Here when we're going in for the close-up, we can actually see the light sources a little bit. But I think this type of exposure needs really strong, punchy light. So maybe it's also just a big light room with a strong light. Or, like I said before, 6x6 butterfly half grid cloth, and then a light with a light dome, also possibility, and also a lot of depth of field. These commercials always have very wide apertures, not that vintage look, very clean technical lenses, but I think this looks fine. Sometimes I think also people over dramatize the usage of vintage lens, technical lens, blah blah. It's big 2026, we have dehancer or something like that. We can make technical lenses a lot softer and more cinematic, when you want to call it like that. Because in my opinion, think about the best photography in the last 30 years or so. Everything was just Canon 5D with a 24-70. But all these images have different looks, different atmospheres because of post-processing. You can do a lot with processing. When you can do it in camera, it's always better. But don't be freaked out because you only have your Sigma art lenses and think, oh, I can make a cinematic look because my lenses are too technical. So here's a different shot in a pretty similar light situation. And one I want to show you here in this situation is the only light or the person is the lead of view. So we want the viewer to look at this woman. So she gets the brightest key light from outside and the other people are facing that way, that they just get a small edge light. As you can see, this should be a different light because the exposure on his back clearly lower as on her face. So they choose more lights to light the whole room, but she gets a special one. And then, like I said before, because we want to be that contrasty, maybe there's on the other side of the room also some negative fill so that the light is not bouncing back, that we need this edge light here on the wall. Like before, just gives some interest into the image, but also helps us that she doesn't look lit. As you can see, the exposure on her face is nearly too perfect. And when we wouldn't have this background light, she would look lit as hell, but they managed to get a really nice look. Also, they let the color temperature pretty cool here on the outside to create a little bit of orange teal so that the cut between the different scenes is not too crazy. We have a gradient of looks that goes extremer or less extreme, but in the same way. So this frame, we have actually sunsets. Now everything becomes much more orange. We have a pretty interesting angle, I think, because normally we don't see a room very often this way. And also, look at this black clipping on him, on the background. They go in here full contrast, but it doesn't feel that bad. Normally, people will now lift everything up, maybe a little bit haze in the background, but no, they wanted that full contrasty, saturated feeling, and it fits the mood of the commercial very good, I think. And to get this type of orange in the background, you don't shoot that at the day. It have to be dark. This could be a set, or you're shooting in a room after sunset and set your light on 10,000 Kelvin or something like this. This very, very deep orange, warm color, but stay on your actor pretty normal, because you only want in this type of commercial, like I said before, the feeling of sunset, not fully, okay, this is how it realistically looks, because it will remove the feeling of our good and healthy saturated people. So if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate subscription from you. Check out the descriptions for nice discounts. My name is Marco Bagnoli. I'll see you next time.